Hello, explorers. Welcome to Reach the World. For over 20 years, Reach the World has used virtual exchange to inspire youth to become curious, confident, and compassionate global citizens. My name is Tim, and I'm really looking forward to introducing you all to an amazing new Explorer Program expedition. For the next 4 weeks, we'll be checking in with members of the Antarctic Heritage Trust's Inspiring Explorers Expedition to Antarctica. These 5 explorers recently journeyed together to Antarctica, following in the footsteps of bold early polar explorers. Expedition members each brought something unique to the expedition, and together they're going to share their experiences in Antarctica with at-home learners through a Reach the World virtual exchange. And you can join them. Visit the Expedition Exchange homepage with your students using the link in the chat bar. If you want to receive exclusive access to the expedition, including an opportunity to ask your questions on camera to an expedition team member during an upcoming video call, email educators@reachtheworld.org. You can find a complete list of upcoming expedition video calls at home.reachtheworld.org. And we'll make sure all the links I just mentioned make it into the chat bar for your reference. And if you're joining the live stream today, please let us know you're here in the same chat bar. It's a great place to tell us where you're listening from, share any questions you have for our guests, and we'll try to get as many of them answered as possible today. So after that lengthy introduction, are you ready to go on an adventure? Joining us today from New Zealand are inspiring explorers, Loretta and Sadra. Welcome to Reach the World, Loretta and Sadra.
Thank you very much. I'll just share my screen with you all so you can see our presentation. So, e wahine mā, e tānei mā, anei takumihi kia koutou kua hui mai nei, tēnā koutou. So kia ora koutou, my name is Loretta Manik and I'm one of the Antarctic Heritage Trust Inspiring Explorers for 2020. So a little bit about me. So last year I finished my master's degree in climate change science and policy. And I currently work for the New Zealand government, actually writing climate change policies. So one reason I wanted to go to Antarctica was to experience its pristine and incredible environment. So Antarctica is one of the most special places on Earth. It's the coldest, the windiest, the driest, single largest ice mass on Earth. It's also home to some of the most pristine oceans in the world, with an enormous variety and quantity of wildlife, much of which is only found in Antarctica. Sadra?
Kia ora everyone, I'm Sadra Sultani. I currently study law and politics here at University of Canterbury in Christchurch, New Zealand. The reason, well, I also had the privilege of being a part of this Inspiring Explorers Expedition 2020. The reason why I applied to be a part of this expedition was because from a young age, I've always been so curious about Antarctica and learning about its wildlife, its environment, its politics. And so here I am. And I've also really always wanted to see Antarctica through my own lens and not someone else's. So here we are.
Awesome. So today, Sadra and I are going to provide an introduction to our expedition to the Antarctic Peninsula. And then over the coming weeks, this will be built further upon by our fellow Inspiring Explorers expedition members. So let's get started. So I'll begin by providing an introduction about the Antarctic Heritage Trust, of who provided this opportunity for us. So who are they? So they're a New Zealand-based charity with a vision of inspiring explorers. They're established in 1987, and their mission is to conserve, share, and encourage the spirit of exploration. So the Trust cares for the remarkable expedition bases of the early Antarctic explorers, including Carsten Borchgrevink, Captain Robert Falcon Scott, Sir Ernest Shackleton, and of course, Sir Edmund Hillary. So the Trust encourages the spirit of exploration through expeditions such as ours to the Antarctic Peninsula to engage and inspire the new generation, like us and you. So what exactly are the Inspiring Explorers expeditions? Well, they're expeditions that provide opportunities for young people to explore the physical world, to inspire them and educate them. So these expeditions connect young people with the legacy that the Trust cares for and encourages them to embrace that same spirit of exploration. And so this spirit is just as critical today in the 21st century as it was over a century ago. The expeditions not only changed the participants' lives, but they also created a platform to sharing inspiring stories and experiences with a wide audience through their outreach programs. And so Inspiring Explorers is selected from a pool of nationwide applications. So far, there's been a number of expeditions, including last year and this year to the Antarctic Peninsula. In 2019, they held the Young Inspiring Explorers Summit in Christchurch, New Zealand. In 2018, they went to the Greenland ice cap. In 2017 to Mount Scott. And the first expedition in 2015 to the South Georgia Island. So who are we? So I'm just going to introduce you to the 2020 Inspiring Explorers expedition team. Beginning with Marcus Waters of the Antarctic Heritage Trust, who is our expedition leader. So if you can all see my mouse, I'm just going to hover across who I'm referring to. So up the top here, we have Marcus. Immediately below, we have Mike Dawson, who is a New Zealand Olympic kayaker. He provided mentoring and a lot of kayaking experience there. We were then accompanied by 5 inspiring explorers, including Sadra and I, who you know. And then we have Anzac Galati here, who's in the middle, who will be providing a presentation to you on exploration. Following by Owain John over here to the side. Owain will be presenting to you on the environment. And then finally, we have Elara Makindo, who will be presenting to you over the coming weeks on Antarctica's nature. We were then accompanied by 2 students and their deputy principal from the Sir Edmund Hillary Collegiate College. So we've got Jay Lee down the bottom here, Ifu up here, and then the deputy principal here, Shauna. So Ifu and Jay Lee were our youngest expedition members at the age of 17. And finally, we were joined by 3 official supporters and mentors. So up the top here, we have Bill, Richard, and Andrew. So that's the team. And now here you'll see a few pictures of our pre-expedition team building weekend in February earlier this year. So this was actually the first time that we had ever met each other. It was also, it was just incredibly invaluable for us to get an opportunity to understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, what exactly we wanted to get out of the expedition. It also ignited a strong bond with us, which was tried and solidified during the expedition. It also provided an excellent opportunity for us to build on our kayaking skills and our confidence on the water ahead of the expedition. So you'll see on the pictures here, we have pictures of us going down rather turbulent waters and whitewater rapids here and here. And then you'll also see us down the bottom in actual sea kayaks, similar to what we used in Antarctica on Auckland's harbour. There were also many other valuable things that we learned. For example, why you should never take a banana on the water. Why is that, Sadra?
Apparently it's bad luck, and I found out the hard way.
Exactly. So there's an ancient myth that bringing bananas on the water is bad luck, and Sadra was reminded of this before going on our trip onto the harbour. And unfortunately, she was the only one that capsized. So that was a hard lesson for Sadra, but thank gosh it was before the expedition. All right, and then so I'm just going to hand you over to Sadra now, who will talk you through some of our objectives of the expedition.
So the objectives of the expedition were to connect with experts and learn about the rich history of Antarctica, enhance our understanding of the science, environment, and wildlife in Antarctica, learn about early polar explorers and their journeys to Antarctica and back, be inspired by the spirit of these early polar explorers, learn to overcome challenges and face our challenges, learn and improve our kayaking and leadership skills, and more importantly, engage and learn about people from across the world and on board with us. So I traveled from New Zealand to Antarctica. So as you can see at the bottom left, we are departing from Auckland Airport. We had a 12-hour flight to Argentina. Once we landed in Buenos Aires, Argentina, we had 2 days to explore this beautiful city. As you can see on the bottom right, we are at La Boca, a very colorful and touristy destination. On our second day, we traveled to Ushuaia, the southernmost tip of South America. We spent half a day in Ushuaia exploring the beautiful town, and then we boarded the ship at the Ushuaia port. In order to get to Antarctica, we had to voyage through the Drake Passage, also known as one of the roughest seas in the world. And this was probably the most challenging part of the expedition for both Loretta and I. A lot of seasickness, but all of that seasickness was so worth it once we actually made it to the Antarctica Peninsula. So as we arrived here, we were given our schedules that covered our days on the ship. Our days on board in Antarctica started quite early. We had breakfast from 6 to 7, and then after that we headed to our first kayak excursion, which was about 2.5 hours roughly. We had at least 2 of these kayak excursions per day, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, and sometimes in the evening as well if the weather was on our side, which was quite rare, but you know, it's good to be hopeful. When we weren't kayaking, we attended presentations by the expedition team. This was really helpful because it kept us busy throughout the day, and you know, it kept us informed as well. We usually ended our day with a quick briefing and a delicious meal. On our 4th day in Antarctica,
video.
Okay, let's go ahead with that one.
So this is a video of us kayaking in Antarctica through some of the brash ice. And you can sort of see the difficulties and the pure sound of the ice scraping underneath the kayak. Not all of the Antarctic waters were like this, but some of them were, and it was actually quite an awesome experience.
It kind of looks like the kayak is going up and over the ice in some places. Are you going up and over?
Yeah, some of the more fully found ice mounts, you would have to go over the top of them.
That was probably the most satisfying sound that you heard.
Yeah.
Very stunning.
Sorry, continue, Sadra.
On our 4th day in Antarctica, the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 as a global pandemic, which resulted in a lot of border closures and a lot of flight cancellations. And for us, this meant that we had to remain on board for further 7 days quarantined in the Beagle Channel in Ushuaia. So 1 week anchored at the Beagle Channel. So at the Beagle Channel, we were kept pretty busy with many different activities throughout the day, organized by the expedition team, including activities like knot tying classes, yoga, boot camps, and many more. And as you can see at the top, Loretta's masterpiece. Would you like to tell us about a little bit about that?
So if we've got any scouts or guides on the call, you'll see that is a bowline knot. So that was just one of the knots that we learned in the knot tying classes. It was very exciting. I have never learned how to tie these knots, so felt very accomplished.
She was quite proud of that knot. And we had an amazing crew on board, and they made sure that every meal was special. And as you can see in that photo in the center, an amazing, delicious barbecue dinner out on the deck. And on the right, we've got Loretta and I writing postcards to our friends and family, which God knows how long it will take until they receive it, how many years, but we're hopeful. Eventually they'll get it. Yeah. And our journey back. So getting back to New Zealand, once we eventually made it back to Buenos Aires, we spent a night there, and the next day we checked out of the hotel and headed to the airport without having flights. This was because all our flights were cancelled, and New Zealand cancelled all their flights from Argentina to Auckland. So a lot of that background things happening in the background. But so we tried our luck and went to the airport without flights, and luckily we managed to get on that one flight. So as you can see, our team at the bottom, that's after securing a flight to Santiago and then Australia and then eventually Auckland, New Zealand. And I think that was probably the last time we saw that Kiwi with us after customs took it. But yeah, and that center photo, we've got Loretta disinfecting all the surfaces around her. Not gonna lie, she was probably the safest out of the team. Super cautious. And finally, we have a pretty quiet and empty flight back home. So that was our journey to Antarctica and back.
Wow.
Awesome. So I'm just going to share with you a haka that we performed to the ship's crew and passengers on our final day, just as a thank you for the experience. So if you don't know what a haka is, so a haka is a type of ancient Māori war dance. It's traditionally used on the battlefield, but it's also used when groups come together in peace. So you might be familiar with hakas from our iconic New Zealand All Blacks rugby games. Awesome. So that's the end of our presentation slides. And so just a huge thank you from Sadra and I for having us and allowing us to introduce our expedition to you all. And now for any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
Oh, great. Loretta and Sadra, that was awesome. What a great introduction to this expedition. It sounds like you had the classic expedition experience of some things going right and some things not going right and having to adapt to a changing set of circumstances, but it looks like you had an amazing experience. I want to do a quick shout out to our viewers on the live stream. I know you're there. If you have questions for us today, be sure to drop them in the chat bar and we'll be happy to pass them along. And until you do, I have a bunch of questions about this expedition. It seems like it was a really fantastic journey that involved a lot of time spent on the water in and around Antarctica. I wonder if while you were paddling around, if you had any sort of interactions with wildlife.
Sadra, do you want to start?
Yeah, well, that was probably the most exciting part of this trip, to be honest. Just, getting close to whales and seals, and it's just like, just trying to find them, like the whales especially. I think I remember there was this whole mission kind of trying to find whales, and once we did, I think we all just went silent and just still on the water, just just admiring the beautiful creatures and just looking at them, and they're such elegant creatures. And yeah, I think it was probably my highlight, just sitting there and admiring this creatures going past us, penguins jumping, zooming past us. Yeah, there's a lot of wildlife for sure.
Yeah, and probably for me, so I'd say that Antarctica has an extremely abundant wildlife scene. So we experienced a lot from birds like albatross and penguins, like gentoo penguins, chinstraps, thousands of penguins actually. And we also had experiences where we'd be kayaking through harbors and there would be seals that sort of approach right up to the side of your kayak or bump you underneath. And then there was also some experiences, for example, one of the highlights was definitely in Wilhelmina Bay, or like I like to refer to it as in my logbook, Wilhelmina Bay, where we're kayaking and it's snowing on us as we're kayaking around this bay, and there's these huge mountainous landscapes around us, and then out of nowhere these huge humpback whales start breaching the surface and feeding all around us, and it's just magnificent. So you're in these tiny kayaks and you've got these huge massive creatures that are just quite inquisitive about who we are and what we're doing in this environment, just checking us out, and it was incredible.
Wow. Sadra, I'm wondering, for those of us who haven't been in a kayak and had like a whale come up next to us, what does that feel like? What are you feeling when you're in this small kayak and you're right in the water right next to a whale?
I feel like that was probably one of my biggest fears before going on this expedition, that I'll end up over a whale, but fortunately that didn't happen, although they did get pretty close. And I think it's just, you feel like you're in their world now, like you're quite vulnerable and they have the power now, but obviously the whales are such, as I said, such elegant creatures. They're just, they do their own thing, they mind their own business, as long as you mind your own business. And it's just a very, it makes you feel very vulnerable, but at the same time you kind of admire their elegance. Yeah,
it sounds incredible. Loretta, I'm wondering, people go to Antarctica as tourists to view, and people go with more of an explorer mindset or on an expedition mindset. What is the difference to you, or how do you see the difference?
Well, I think a lot of the passengers on our ship were going there for more of like a passenger sort of, I've always wanted to check out their Antarctic scene. So we had 198 passengers on board our ship, or 199 including myself. And so we obviously went there with an intention of a specific thing. And for me, that was one of my huge passions is climate change. And so this is obviously a space that's incredibly vulnerable and delicate to that. It also holds some of the planet's records over the past hundreds of thousands of years. So incredibly interesting space in that sense for me. So I think going in there for us, I feel like I was much more attuned to particular things, particularly from the environmental side, than say if you had come in for more of like I have no idea what to experience from this, I'm just here to experience Antarctica. So I think it sort of just made you more alert to particular things. And with us, particularly from an explorer point of view, we were quite keen to follow in the footsteps, particularly of the explorers that I mentioned previously, particularly like Sir Edmund Hillary. And the sorts of like expeditions and things that they did. So whilst we have more of like a 21st century modern day experience on like a beautiful ship with warm air conditioning and that sort of thing, like they didn't have that. They had it on a cold, damp sailing ship and that sort of thing. So it's just, it's quite interesting when you pair the explorer part with also, obviously we wanted to see and experience Antarctica like more generally as well.
Okay, yeah. Sandra, I wonder what it felt like to be in the footsteps of those early polar explorers who, we've all read about in history books and heard about their exploits. What is it like to know that you're in a place where they were many, many years before you?
It's an incredible feeling, but at the same time, we exploring Antarctica is a lot different to how they explored it, as Loretta said. And at least we had an idea of what Antarctica looked like before going there, but they went there without having a single idea of what this continent was, if it was even there or not. And I feel like their exploration, their discovery was so much. I can't imagine what they felt when they discovered this continent. So because when I discovered that, when I saw it, I was like, I was blown away, even though I had a full picture of what Antarctica was, but still there were so many things that I didn't know. So I can't imagine what they experienced and what they felt like when they discovered it. But it's for us, it's a small step for us. Yeah.
You bring up a really good point. I'd be interested to hear both of your perspectives on this. We have such great access to Google Maps and the records of people who have been places before us. Was there anything about Antarctica that surprised you?
I feel like, go ahead.
There you go.
I feel like as Loretta said before, I had always imagined Antarctica to be like flat ice, all ice, but I was so surprised with how the mountains and how amazing and magnificent the mountains were, and it kind of blew me away because I never expected Antarctica to be that way, because obviously the internet had built a different picture in my head of what Antarctica is. And that's the thing with exploration. Unless you go there and explore it yourself, you'll never actually know what it's actually like. We're living in a technology world. It's like an information overload. We're kind of we're kind of relying too much on this internet and not doing our own research to see actually what is this place like. I want to see it through my own lens, as I said, and it's totally different to what for me personally, it was a lot different than what I had imagined and what I had seen previously and on the internet and on TV and things like that.
So obviously the mountainous landscape was quite a surprise from the cartooned Antarctica, which is a flat ice continent. But something that was also stood out for me was the amount of land masses that actually had no snow or ice. So they were sort of covered in a rocky terrain. And so whilst this varies seasonally, that sort of was a surprise to me that I didn't expect that. And I also didn't expect the abundance and inquisitive nature of the wildlife that you have down there. So you have penguins that wander right up to you. And so naturally, I can't imagine they have a lot of interaction with people down in Antarctica. So the fact that they, instead of being scared, they would actually come right up to you and sort of come and check you out, whether that's penguins or even, as I mentioned, the whales earlier. And it sort of was quite a nice reminder of what the planet was like before the human influence, and just seeing the natural environment as it once was.
All right, yeah, great perspective. One of our online viewers would like to know, and maybe we can start with you, Sadra, what was the most difficult or scary part? You mentioned how the whales, but were there any other challenges to this expedition?
Personally, for me, I think the most challenging part was the polar plunge. I have a phobia of deep waters, and the fact that I was jumping in deep waters, and in Antarctica especially, I think that I was thinking that the whole day I couldn't focus on anything else, because my mind was like, okay, it's 11 o'clock, we're doing the polar plunge, and I couldn't think of it because I feel like it's always for us Muslim girls, we're not really encouraged to do a lot of swimming and things like that. So that's why I never had the opportunity to actually do a lot of swimming, and so that's where my fear came from, because I never actually experienced it. But when I did, I think I loved it. I could have actually done that the second time, and that kind of tells you something about facing your challenges. Like once you actually face it, the fear goes away. It becomes so normal, and you're just like wondering, why was I actually so fearful of this, even though it wasn't that bad. So yeah, I think the polar plunge was definitely a big challenge for me.
Well, now that we know that you survived that experience, can you tell us exactly what that entailed? Like, what is a polar plunge in Antarctica? What does that look like?
Well, so they opened up the side of the boat, the ship, and they will tie up a rope on your waist, and you had to jump off the ship into the water in Antarctica, in the freezing water. And it was snowing that day, right? Really?
Yeah, well, it was snowing.
Yeah, it was snowing that day. So there's snow and the water's freezing. And so yeah, you just kind of deep waters, you just throw yourself and just hope for the best. Yeah, so that was the polar plunge.
Great. And then they just pull you back in with the rope?
They pull you back, or you can swim back, but same thing. And if you drown, like I was quite pleased with that rope, because I had no faith in me.
That sounds like a really great experience. Loretta, how about you? What was a challenge or a hardship that you found?
Probably, well, going into it, I was quite nervous. I sort of shared the similar nerves as Sadra did about going into the wildlife and experience, like sort of going into where there's seals and that sort of thing. And I had kind of imagined, or I guess had a nightmare that I'd be mauled by a seal or like taken out of my kayak by a whale or something like that. And like those are obviously not as big a issues as I had once anticipated. But yeah, so for example, we were kayaking around one of the harbors, and then we had one of these seals that just kind of bump up underneath the kayak, and I was sort of like, oh, this is now, it's happening, I'm about to be mauled by a seal. But it's not. It was actually incredible. I think it's just the idea that because you don't have this constant interaction with these animals, there's this inherent fear of what they could do to you, and like sort of stories that you always fixate on, like where they have killed somebody or they've done something, and where they're not like that at all. They're just inquisitive. They've just come to check you out what this big sort of triangular object is on the water. And we had this one seal that just kind of like emerged its head from the water and then just stared at Marcus and Jaylee for like a period of time, and they would just keep popping up and staring at them. And it's yeah, it was actually really awesome putting that sort of fear behind you and just experiencing the moment.
Yeah, and they're quite curious animals, to be honest.
Yeah, incredibly curious.
Very curious.
Oh, that's great. What maybe as a closing question here, what advice would each of you give to young people who are interested in Antarctica, would love to go on an expedition of their own to a place as fascinating as Antarctica someday? What would you say to young people?
I would say go for it. I would say that if you see the opportunity, grasp it. I think that many people, one, forget about Antarctica or just think it's too remote to ever travel there or think it's too hard to go there. I think like one, seeking out any opportunities, doing some research into how you could get there or the sorts of expeditions that go, whether that's like a career pattern, whether that's study, whether that's like in a program like the Antarctic Heritage Trust. Like it's just like sort of seeking out those opportunities, and I would say just really going for them. I think there'd be these inherent fears like Sadra and I had, and sort of with the going into it with the idea that this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. For us, it was exploring Antarctica in sea kayaks, for example, which is incredibly rare, and I imagine I'll be talking about this for the rest of my life. So I think it would just be really like seeking those opportunities, grasping them, and yeah, really just going for it.
Yeah, and I definitely second that. Like we need to stop relying so much on Google for all our information, for all the information that we're digesting. We need to stop relying on Google and actually do our own exploration and discover things for ourselves. And that discovery is a lot more meaningful and a lot more helpful to you than that Google search is. So yeah. Just do it. And also, just so you know, there's paddle boarding in Antarctica, which was quite surprising for us. So there you go. That's another thing you can do in Antarctica. Go for it.
Well, thank you both. The last 30 minutes has just flown by. It's been such a pleasure talking to you and getting to know you and hearing more about your expedition to Antarctica. I'm very excited over the next few weeks to be connecting with other members of your expedition and hearing different perspectives as part of this virtual exchange. But I think you introduced the expedition and the team so well, and it's just been fantastic talking to you. I want to thank also our entire YouTube live stream audience today for joining us. If you want to learn more about this expedition to Antarctica, I'd suggest you go to the link in the chat bar to the right-hand side. We have a link directly to the expedition homepage, and we'll be publishing articles from Loretta and Sadra this week. They'll be up, and we'll keep updating that expedition homepage as we go. You can join us again for any one of several additional exciting Reach the World live stream events that we have left to go this week. And like I said, we'll be connecting back with the Inspiring Explorers Expedition to Antarctica every week for the next 4 weeks. So thank you both again, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks.